There is no doubt about it. The Air Max Penny is an absolute legend of a basketball shoe. And with so many people, especially in my comments section, always complaining that, newer basketball shoes just aren't made with the craftsmanship that basketball shoes used to be made from. The materials are worse. These older models are still better than the new ones. It's worth looking into. Can the Air Max Penny still hold up against today's basketball shoes? Or is it in some ways better than today's more maximalist basketball shoes? Let's look into it. Now, starting off in the uppers, there is a lot to like about the Air Max Penny, especially in the material department. You got nubuck mixed with rubber, mixed with synthetic materials. The one thing I don't like is that the tongue of these is more minimalist for such a maximalist shoe, as well as the shoelaces are super minimalist, compared to the more maximalism of the shoe. And I kind of thought that was weird, except for the fact that the second lace eyelet from the most distal spot is rubberized on the inside. So you really can't fit a thicker lace than this through that, which I thought was kind of odd. I mean, I like it because right where you're going to be pivoting the most, you do have a little bit of a hardier lockdown, but I think they could have opened that eyelid a little more and then just have gotten a thicker, chunkier lace to be able to lock down a shoe this big, because I kind of found that the lockdown of these wasn't great for a maximalist shoe. I still had heel slippage, even in a shoe that's, kind of in the mid to high category. And it's not that my heel was slipping out of it completely, but I could feel it coming up and down off the Air Max unit in the heel. Now, if you look at that heel counter, it does dive down a little bit toward the Achilles. So, that is nice. You get a little bit more fluid dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, but the padding around the ankle collar is flat. There's no rolls to the bunting in it. So like some other shoes who are a lot more minimalist, especially kind of in like the Adidas categories or in some of Nike's more minimalist shoes, where you get that real rolled bunting that really kind of sucks your ankle down into the shoe. This is just a flat pad. So it's basically, there's really nothing stopping your heel from shifting up and down in the back of the shoe. With the shoe being this big, there's a lot to lift. So the shoe starts to feel heavier on your foot because it's not, tying down like a glove, just because the whole shoe just kind of has trouble kind of really enveloping around your ankle. And I would say all the issues with containment on the Air Max Penny are confined to the rear foot of the shoe. The Air Max unit, as well as the foam that surrounds the Air Max, is a little bit different than the rest of the shoe, which we'll get to in the midsole section. But as you get further into the forefoot, you get this really bulky foam that reinforces the entire lateral side of the uppers. It does have quite a bit of thickness right where you'd be pivoting the hardest, so it does make the shoe very containing in the forefoot. It's just that it's a mismatch with the rear foot. Now, for all those containing elements on the medial and lateral side of the shoe, that also gives them not so great breathability. If you look at the breathability test on these things, they heated up 123.5 degrees, cooled down another 75.1 degrees. And if you look at the heat mapping of it, or kind of the egress map where you're getting all the airflow, it's basically just coming back out the ankle collar. There's really not a lot of room there for airflow. I mean, you do get some kind of coming around the tongue because the gussets on it are just these little elastic straps, but these definitely are not the most breathable shoes out there. I could tell even on indoor courts, my foot was starting to get pretty hot as well as pretty damp. So, and you can see with the smoke machine, there's really just no room for any of the moisture or heat or air to go in these. And on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I did it on the nubuck as well as the foam. And if you look at the foam section of that, I mean, the burr just kind of caught into it and just started pummeling it. The leather piece did a little bit better, although it still did get scuffed up pretty good. I mean, obviously these are not outdoor shoes, although the traction is really good on outdoor courts. We'll get to that later. But I would say if you are a big slider or dragger, if you produce a lot of heat even on an indoor court, I could see this foam starting to look a little weird. However, obviously indoors is going to be a ton better than outdoors. And getting into the midsole teardown, just the look of it as well as the feel underfoot reminds me of some more recent Nike tennis shoes like the Nike Vapor Pro 2 and the Nike Vapor 11, which are kind of like low top descendants of this shoe. It's kind of interesting. So you've got an entire bed of Nike Phylon. However, there is lower density foam around the Air Max unit, and that's really what I think kind of gave me some issues with these shoes. Now, you do have a top-loaded Zoom Air unit here in the forefoot, and that's what produced, I think, the majority of the speed ratio of this shoe, and then a giant Air Max unit in the heel. Now, what's interesting is that there's no shank, but the Phylon, like in these Nike tennis shoes, the black Phylon here is so dense that I think if you had a shank in there, the shoe might feel too stiff just because the rubber on the bottom of it is so bottom heavy, it's so thick, and then the foam in it is also pretty dense. However, when you get into the rear foot, you get Air Max, which is the most stable thing out there, but usually in the heel it's okay. Then you get lighter, less dense foam around there, and what I noticed, like we were talking about in the upper section, is that when you go to cut or pivot, especially off the rear foot, the rear foot would start to buckle on you versus the forefoot, which was so stable. So the forefoot was kind of staying put, and the rear foot was almost like internally rotating, or allowing your foot to internally rotate, I should say. And it was kind of a disconcerting feeling, just because you couldn't trust the rear foot of the shoe on these. And that's why I always say a high top or a mid top is not going to stop an ankle sprain. It's usually the shape of the shoe, like the shape of the last, as well as the density of the midsole foam and the shape of the outsole rubber. So just keep that in mind with these. Now, if you look at the bounce height test on the Air Max Penny, got 30 centimeters in the rear foot, 45.5 centimeters in the forefoot. No surprise there. Top loaded zoom on top of very dense, stiff phylon, on top of rubber, on top of the grounds. I mean, that usually produces a ton of bounce. Now, like I said, these shoes are very hard to bend, and they're not the easiest things to get up off the ground. I will say, coming down off of crash landings over and over again, it was pretty darn forgiving. It's just that a few times I could notice my rear foot starting to invert when I came down, if I wasn't coming down like real solid. I think the midsole setup of these says more about how good Penny Hardaway was. Now, of course, these are retros and not an exact copy of the original Air Max Penny, but these are the closest we can get these days to that original release. By far the most confusing part of the Air Max Penny, though, was the outsole tread. I mean, they're perfect treads for outdoor courts, really flat, wide wave patterns going all the way through there. A nice break point here in the forefoot. This is something that can really grab, asphalt, cement, painted courts really well. It's just that on indoor courts, number one, I found these picked up dust pretty easily, and I was playing on freshly redone hardwood. The other thing is off the jump, these things don't really have a lot of traction. You get about 5-10 minutes of warm up and they get a little bit better, but then they start picking up dust. I just did not notice really any confident traction in these. If you are trying to really put the brakes on, stop on a dime, change direction, it was extremely hard for me, and I think I'm one of the better people to experience that, because like I said, I'm not that good at basketball, right? Like, my talents lie in being a foot doctor, and my talent can't get me through sometimes when I'm not feeling confident in a shoe. If a shoe's not doing something for me, I'm gonna feel it really easily, versus someone who's a lot better, who, like Penny Hardaway, their talent is just going to get them through pretty much anything they put on them. I mean, they could be wearing the, Penny Hardaway could be putting on the Schrocks, and he could be doing just fine, versus, me, who I'm gonna be rolling over left to right. So, if you look at the outsole durability test, though, there is some good stuff in there. Not even a millimeter of damage on this. It is very hard rubber, so they are going to last you a while for sure. And if you do want to put these on outdoor courts, they should do pretty decent for you. It's just that I would say the breathability on these isn't going to be good if you're playing in hot conditions, cooler conditions. I think they're great. It's one of the better shoes for that, to be honest. But if you go over and look at the speed ratio of them, only come in at a 2.03, and that was kind of juiced from having the top-loaded Zoom Air unit and that ball bearing falling right on that. So if you're a lighter player and you're not going to be able to put as much force into the forefoot of the shoe, you're not going to be able to get really anything out of them, right? Because you're going to need a strong leg to put all the force into the shoe and be able to kind of extract it back. So in terms of speed, they're definitely clunkers. They remind me more of the Adidas Crazy Infinity really than anything out there. So if you're looking for speed in a maximalist package, look at the GT Jump. And getting into the fit of the Air Max Penny, this is where I like older shoes just because they fit a little bit boxier, a little bit more hot dog shaped. So I mean, a narrow foot, I think definitely go down a size. Medium foot, it'd probably be going down a half size at 2E. Probably going true to size, wear a thick pair of socks just for lockdown 4E. I might want to go up a half size, but even at that, it's going to be a lot of shoe. In terms of the snake bitten foot or anything you might be bringing to the court in terms of ailments, that's what snake bites mean, just little ailments you have in your foot. A lot of people ask me that in the comment section. I think with an orthotic in these, they do really well. I mean, Air Max is forgiving. Forefoot zoom is really nice. These definitely create a cocoon around your foot. There's not going to be a lot that can kind of get to your foot on the court, and even for kind of like foot-to-foot combat in the paint, these are going to be pretty protective. So I think in those instances, it's fine. It's just that getting them up and off the ground all the time might kind of do something to your Achilles tendon or your anterior tibial tendon, and in that aspect, could give maybe some shin splints in regards to that, just because you're gonna need very strong anterior muscle groups to keep playing in these over and over again. So I think for the bottom of your foot, they're okay. For everything else, they're going to be a little bit problematic, especially someone who is a sprainer, who thinks that buying a mid-top or a high top is going to stop that. And last but certainly not least, getting into the playability and if these can really hold up against, you know, more modern shoes. I think kind of can see where I'm going with this. I don't see it, to be honest. More recent maximalist shoes, I think in this kind of category, like the LeBron 19, the Nike GT Jump 1, Nike GT Jump 2, even like the Harden Volume 7, I can kind of see is almost like a descendant of these, the Wave 10s. They just, you know, newer materials to me are better in a lot of ways because they are lighter, they're more breathable, but they have the same kind of containment as these old ones. I think if you like Penny Hardaway and you want this shoe, by all means, go buy it. I don't know if I'd be trying to go out there and play an hour in them though. I think there's just better options in more recent shoes. I honestly think there's better options in more retro shoes. I mean, the Jordan 11, the Jordan 13, Jordan 12 even, those are fantastic retro shoes that can still play pretty well. I mean, I have reviews on them on the channel showing that, you know, they do just as well as modern shoes. I think the Jordan 11, the Jordan 13 compete with just about every other basketball shoe out there right now. I think that's how good they still are. This one, I'm just not so sure. The foam posits in the Penny line, a little bit of a different story. I like those a lot more. It's just, like I said, I think if you're someone who wants protection on the bottom of your foot and someone who wants a lot of heft under the forefoot, you play up on the balls of your foot a lot, and you're not really worried about the rear foot, then I think it's okay. And like I said, you know, they put less dense foam in the rear foot, so it's a little bit lighter. They have Air Max back there, so you know, you are going to get forgiveness for crash landings, but you got to be someone who wants to play up on the balls of your foot all the time and want a more maximalist shoe. I think Penny Hardaway is one of the best players to come on an NBA court. If you watch the documentary about him and Shaq and the Magic on ESPN 30 for 30, you'll see how talented, you know, he really was, even up against the best players of that era. Like I said, I think this kind of shows you where the evolution of the Penny line went, right from the ones and twos and the foam posits. So I think, you know, once we do the twos, and then probably I'll do another review of the foam posits again on this channel just to kind of see the evolution of them, just because now I'm kind of interested in reviewing them sequentially, just because of how these felt and kind of how you know, I know what the foam posits you like a lot better because I've played them more recently. So I will be doing the Penny 2s coming up pretty soon on this channel, which I think is going to be really fun because I don't really remember having them on foot. I don't really remember these much on foot either. I remember wanting these in the store and being told I wasn't allowed to get them, and that's why I didn't really want to cut these open at first, but then after I played them, I was like, all right, well, I guess I can, because I really wanted to see what was going on in the rear foot and the midsole, and really wasn't disappointed in seeing, you know, why there definitely was a reason for that. It wasn't just all in my head. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially about the Air Max Penny. Did you play with them back in the day? Do you want to get them now? Are you playing in them right now? Or are you just getting them to kind of kick around? And so let me know in the comments section down below. And if you want to see what I'm talking about with some of the more maximalist options right now coming out, especially in something like the Nike GT Jump and GT Jump 2, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.